So, sometimes when I'm out and about, I get questions about the podcast on a regular basis.
That's exciting because that means people are listening. That's good.
And it's kind of funny because, recently my mother had a health event and I was out in my home state of Missouri. Yeah. And I had 2 or 3 people ask me questions about the podcast and they apparently listen. I got an email from somebody in Florida. I had a friend reference something. He lives in Africa. So,
that's cool.
There are folks around the world who listen to our little podcast here. And here's the question that I keep getting over and over, Josh. Who's Josh? That's, for
the enigma.
Well, for 4 or 5 years, it was me and Ben, and the producer was more in the background. But now that Ben has left, and plus you're just fun to talk to, so we end up bringing you into the conversations more and more and more. And so people want to know more about you. I think I told you this the other day.
I'm honored.
I referred somebody to go look at us at YouTube. They were listening to us on the podcast. They'd never seen you.
Oh, yeah. We are on YouTube. Yeah. Almost all of these are posted. We occasionally have technical difficulties and then we don't post them on YouTube. But these are mostly edited and put on YouTube.
I often, for whatever reason, I post the YouTube ones on my social media. So those, when I do that, they get more traction because for whatever reason, people like that. And we do some clips on social media as well. Right. But anyway, they were surprised. I don't know what they expect you to look like, but they were surprised. Yeah. So, because you look in real life, you look professorial. You look a little mysterious, and it's a little enigmatic in that you've got a couple tattoos.
I do. I have one tattoo. I do have a tattoo of a phoenix.
It's just big enough that it looks like it's a couple.
And I'll just say for people wondering why does the Christian guy have a tattoo? My wife and I got matching tattoos when we realized several years ago. We just kind of realized we need to make our marriage the forefront, no matter what ministry stuff, no matter what kids stuff is going on. So he already had tattoos. He was awesome with tattoos. And so the phoenix is kind of being the symbol of just kind of I can't forget to make my wife number one because this is on my body every day. And so this is that is what the tattoo is.
That's cool. I wear this something similar that reminds me I'm married. It's called a wedding ring.
That works too.
If a tattoo works,
that works too.
My kids are always like, "Dad, you should get a tattoo." And I had to do one just for the fun of it. Just not a real one, but like a fake one.
Boy.
My kids, their heads would explode, I'm sure.
It would be amazing if we got to a certain listenership. If we just had a challenge, like at 1 million views, would you get a small tattoo? Could we make that a challenge?
Yeah, it ain't gonna happen, but that's a good idea. No. But it's funny how you introduce that, it's a Christian guy wearing a tattoo. So I want us to do an episode sometime in the future is, can a Christian do that? Because we've got all these certain rules, that can a Christian guy have a piercing or, these cultural things that are hilarious. So see, you gave me a new idea. Anyway, back to the drawing board. My name is Dan. I'm one of the teaching pastors at Life Fellowship in Cornelius, North Carolina, suburban Charlotte. This is Life Talks, and we just do a variety. It is all kinds of different things. Sometimes they're deep theological discussions. Sometimes they are get to meet somebody. Sometimes they are philosophical. Sometimes they're political, or sometimes they're just nonsense. Today, what I want you to do is I want you to meet Josh Brahm, because I should have done this a couple of weeks or several months ago, but I haven't. But I just want to kind of get you to get to know him, why he's here, why I have such a good time with him, and why you ought to figure out who he is and maybe follow him a little bit as well, in that he has a ministry that I think you'll find very interesting. So Josh, first of all, tell us from whence you hail. All right.
I was born in Los Angeles, California. I grew up in Sacramento. So I lived in LA for the first 6 years of my life, and then I spent the rest of my childhood in the Sacramento area.
So you're a West Coast guy.
I'm a West Coast guy. I'm a California guy, trying to not hold it against me. Yeah. But I definitely grew up in California. That's why I don't have an accent.
Yeah.
And I really liked elements of California. I miss a lot of my friends, the people that I grew up with in California. It's where I did a lot of music in California. I still love going back there. But yeah,
it's surely one of the most beautiful states in the country too.
It is. Yosemite, and you've got everything.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. The fact is though that you grew up in a homeschool family.
Yep.
You're a musician. So tell us a little bit about what makes you kind of tick.
Yeah. So I was musical really early. I took guitar lessons when I was 4 for a couple of years, and I struggled with the strings, with having to hold the strings down really hard. But I had an uncle who was a musician who had tried and failed to be a professional musician, and we had this one wonderful get together where he basically taught me the blues. He taught me the 3 notes that you need to add to kind of make things bluesy, and that kind of gave me enough to start kind of working with and expanding on. And so I eventually started taking classical lessons, classical piano lessons. Did that for like 12 years. Learned by ear, the Suzuki method. And so it ended up being really helpful for church, because when I joined a worship team when I was 11, we went to a really homeschool friendly church. Everyone homeschooled. There were large families. It wasn't Catholic. It was a Protestant, non-denominational thing, but it's kind of known for being a homeschool haven.
Small family-oriented homeschool cult based on...
There are certainly elements, perhaps. There are certainly elements.
And you don't need to send me an email. It was a joke, people. It was a joke.
There was definitely, I think the leadership has changed a lot in the time since I went there, and would probably all look back and say that there was legalism and a lot of extra rules that didn't come from the Bible, but were more kind of manufactured from this culture of all trying to raise children well and all of that, all well-meaning.
Great motivations, a little zealotry thrown in.
Yep. Yeah. And they were very pro-life also. And so this was where kind of my pro-life story started. Was my dad took me with a group of guys from the church to pray at an abortion clinic in downtown Sacramento. Now there were people at this church who had done like rescues, who had done like were like blocking clinic doors and getting arrested.
Back in the 70s and 80s when they really got...
Back when you could do that and not go to jail for a very long time. They were doing that for a while, but that was not something that my family did. But my dad took me to pray with a group of guys, and no one told me what abortion was. I was just here to pray with some guys in front of this weird brick building in downtown Sacramento at 11 years old. So I was bored. I didn't know what was going on. This was not this like serious moment for me. But I was trying to understand, like, what are they praying about? I could tell there's something like wrong happening, but I didn't get it. But when I talked to my parents kind of later about that experience, they told me what abortion was. And I went through a sequence of 3 emotions. First, I felt surprise. Because I just had never thought of the idea of anyone not wanting to be pregnant. This was like my cultural bubble was getting pierced for the first time. Like everyone liked having kids. Everyone, it was a very, very welcoming thing, right? And so just like, oh, wow. And then I felt really sad. Not angry, but sad. And then I felt a rising sense of, well, I guess I'm going to have to stop that one day. Like any overzealous homeschool kid, I'm going to be William Wilberforce, that kind of thing. And my parents had a book from kind of one of the early pro-life apologists, and I read that, and that kind of set me on a direction of I knew I cared a lot about music. I loved music. I loved being on worship team and playing and learning different instruments and things. And I also felt passionate about this pro-life topic. And I was telling people at 11 that I was going to be a pro-life speaker when I grew up.
Wow.
Which is an odd thing to be telling people. I wasn't going to be a firefighter or an astronaut.
I'm going to end abortion in my lifetime.
I basically wanted to be a pro-life speaker. I wanted to be a pro-life apologist. And then I went in and eventually did that.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, because, over the course of my life, I've always been aware of the battle. Roe versus Wade happened when I was a teenager, and it became something that we talked about. Again, growing up in a similar conservative fundamentalist type church, it was something that I was aware of. But later on in the 70s and 80s, a little bit of rise of political activism, abortion became kind of one of the platform tenets that we built a movement on. And then in the 70s and 80s, Randall Terry, I was trying to think of some of the big leaders that would lock themselves to the doors and would try to prevent people from going in. It was a real in-your-face type of approach. When I found out that you did this, I kind of just assumed that you're one of those guys that, you go to a college campus and you get out these really big pictures that show the graphic consequences of an abortion, and you argue with people on the sidewalk. That's not what you do at all.
No.
Not even close.
No. But I have done that. I have experience doing, like, working with other organizations that have put up large graphic posters of abortion. I'm not convinced that that's the most effective outreach approach.
Well, we know it's not effective because abortions haven't gone down as a result of it at all.
I mean, so I will push back a little bit for my friends who do it and say, like, the abortion rate has been going down since, like, 1990, generally speaking, until recently. Like, it was only under Trump's presidency that the abortion rate finally went back up for the first time. The public opinion hasn't changed a ton, although it has stayed, roughly, like, the fact that pro-life and pro-choice was kind of like 50-50 or like 45-55 kind of going back and forth for a long time, while cultural opinions on a lot of other cultural issues went left, might be significant. At a psychological place, like I understand. I feel like people back then were trying, in their words, they were trying to act like abortion is actually killing babies. And they're like, what would it look like if the church actually acted like abortion is killing babies? Well, we'd probably try to block the places. We'd probably put up big pictures and things like that. And we tried a bunch of different things.
We often use the Holocaust as a parallel example. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just, so psychologically, I'm really interested in what is going to be the most convincing to someone on the outside. What is going to be the most persuasive? And certainly there are people who have changed their minds because they saw big graphic sign. I've met them. People are so complicated that there's not a silver bullet. There's not a single method or argument or thing that will work for every person. It's like some people need to hear a story of a woman who had an abortion and what her story was and what that did to her and her healing process. Some people need that. Some people need a really great philosophical argument from someone like me. Like, there's all these different things. But we don't put, so when we do an outreach, it's a lot more informal and smaller. We're not trying to make a big splash. We're not trying to get in the campus papers, but we will set up like a table that will have a question on it that'll say something like, should abortion be legal, or something like that. And we'll have a yes option and a no option and an it depends option, or some kind of middle option, and maybe something to give people just so they don't feel like I'm forcing them into a binary. Like, however you want to label yourself, I don't care. This is not a real poll. This is not statistically relevant at all. Pro-choice always wins. Don't worry. It's a college campus. We are fishing for conversations. And as people come up, we'll try to engage with them and just have the kind of conversation that people ought to be having about things, not where we're yelling at each other and or just trying to, like, get the other person to believe all the things that we believe, but we're just like staring at a problem with someone, like this. Okay, what is going on? How, like, let's try to find truth together, and hopefully through this process we will learn more true things together. Maybe that'll be even over a period of conversations, maybe years of conversations, but hopefully by the end of it, we'll know more true things and fewer false things. And a lot of times that might be talking about abortion, that might be talking about other things, but that is kind of what our outreaches look like. Is you'll see a lot of little dialogues going on when our campus groups set up an outreach, but it's not a big splash, and we do use graphic pictures in brochures with people's permission. I do think that photographic evidence is relevant, is important. I think just psychologically, people a lot of times are sort of shut down when it's forced on them. But if they consent to see it, then you open the brochure and they see it. They really look, and they're not distracted by how dare you do this thing, or I'm like being worried about the post-abortive people around, and like all of that kind of goes away. And they just see the image, and we can talk about, whether or not bodily autonomy arguments, perhaps justify this, inherently or whatever.
And one of the things I've learned so much from you, Josh, over the years that I've known you, but one of the things that resonates deeply with me, but the fact is, all of us are uniquely designed in the image of God. We learn differently. We different. Some people are musical, some people are not. Some people are emotional, some people are factually driven. And one of the responsibilities and it's been one of the key epigrams I use in my ministry, is we have to learn to meet people where they are. We have to love them to where they need to be. And that's what I love about your approach. Again, like you mentioned, different people respond to different doorways.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about what you do is you choose a doorway that is compassionate. but
Yeah.
clarifying,
Yes.
because you reach the right conclusions, but so much of dialogue is shut down by shouting.
Yes.
And so then it is binary.
Yeah.
It's either you're pro-woman or you're pro-baby murder. Or,
Right. Right.
Yeah,
It's going to be one of these two. You're either pro-baby or pro-woman.
Yeah. So you approach this differently. Tell us a little bit about some of the examples you would find of being able to engage people thoughtfully in this conversation.
Oh boy, so many examples that come up. So one of my favorite stories to tell that kind of shows ways that questions can kind of help disarm false assumptions and kind of how to deal with someone who's really angry. We set up a booth at Aquinas College in Michigan. It's a Catholic university, but we talked to tons of pro-choice people all day, as you do at a Catholic university. And so I was hanging out at the booth. I was behind the table, and she came up and she started the conversation super calm, cool, and collected. Just, why do you want to control women's bodies? Like that kind of thing. And I said,
not extreme at all.
I said, I promise I'm going to answer that question, but could I ask you a couple of questions first? I love finding common ground. And she's like, fine. I was like, okay. It was like, do you think that abortion should be legal for all 9 months, or do you think it should be legal for something less than that? And she was like, I think people have been talking about 20 weeks in these state bills lately. That kind of makes sense to me. I think you could draw the line at 20 weeks. Like, okay. Are there any reasons that women have abortions that you don't think are okay? And she's like, well, I'm against birth control abortions. She's the only pro-choice person I've ever heard use that phrase. It's a very pro-lifey kind of, phrase. But she's like, I'm opposed to flippant abortions is what she meant. But she's like, but if the person is poor or has been raped or something like that, then of course I would support her or whatever. And I said, yeah, okay, yeah, that's that. Yeah, I'm tracking with you. I said, it's one other, what if it's a sex selection abortion? Like, what if they're aborting a girl because it's a girl, but some cultures do, and even in America when they get the ultrasound. She's like, yeah, I'm not okay with that. I said, okay. So one more question. I said, I'm not trying to make fun of you, but why do you want to control women's bodies? And she's like, what? And I was like, oh yeah, because we agreed that abortion should be against the law and after 20 weeks, and it shouldn't be done flippantly. We shouldn't have them for sex selection reasons. Like, why do you want to control women's bodies? And she's like, I don't feel like I do. It's like, I don't feel like I do either. I said, can we get past the bumper sticker slogans and like that, I want to talk to you. I want to understand who you are, not the last pro-choice person I talked to, but it's just at least more complicated than trying to control women's bodies. And so she was like, okay. And so she kind of calmed down. And then she says, but I just feel like women should be able to do whatever they want with anything inside of their bodies. And I said, okay, that is a common pro-choice view. I'm tracking with that. I said, I think the problem is that your view disagrees with itself. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, if the way that you ground the reason to be pro-abortion choice is to say that a woman should be able to do anything she wants with anything inside of her body, she said, like a total sovereign zone, total bodily autonomy, then maybe you wouldn't have a flippant abortion or a post-20-week abortion, but some other people would. And you would, you're not saying that, this would go against that. So typically the pro-choice person has a couple of options here. They can either kind of jump over to the other big disagreement that pro-life and pro-choice people have about whether or not the unborn are valuable persons. I'm so happy to have that conversation. We can do that. But if this is more important for them, bodily autonomy often is the more important kind of foundational thing. I'm happy to just talk about that. She could have made a better version of this argument. She could have gone all philosophical and violinist argument and everything. But she made the third choice. She bit the bullet. So I could almost see the light bulb come on over her head. And she was like, you're right. I think you're right. She's like, I shouldn't be against any abortions. Well, I've got to go to class. Goodbye. And she walks away. And I was like, wait a minute.
We're just getting started.
Finished. And Jacob on our team, who's hilarious, was watching this and was just like, wait a minute. Did you just make her more pro-choice? Like, that's the worst conversation I've ever seen in my life. And the conversation that our staff had on the rental van on the way to the church missionary housing that we were on our way to after that was whether or not that young woman was better off or worse off for having met me.
Wow.
That was the topic of conversation. But here's where we landed. She was better off for having met me because she walked up to our booth with a inconsistent but comfortable pro-choice position, which is really common. Mm-hmm. She had to walk away with a consistent, very uncomfortable pro-choice position where she had to bite the bullet. She had to basically say that all abortions should be legal, which is not where most pro-choice people are at. And that's going to be an important part of her probably multi-part journey. Mm-hmm. She needed to have this kind of difficult walk away from me where mentally she's like, I just had to say that, like, I'm fine with all the abortions. Like, that's not good. Like that kind of experience. That would be kind of an example trying to take a different approach, to use different questions, and sometimes just being willing to just say things, just kind of be like, let me spell out kind of what I'm seeing here and help me understand what you're seeing differently.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. And here's the thing that I think all of us need to remember, whether we're talking evangelism or we're talking about trying to get our point across about a political position mm-hmm. or something as important philosophically and morally as abortion, is that it is a journey.
Yeah.
I think so often we want a mixed solution, like going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
We want one conversation to change the trajectory for them to look at everything I've ever said is wrong. Yeah. You're right. I agree. Now, let me go with you next week and I'll stand with you. That never, well, I can't say never happens, but almost never happens.
Yeah.
All of us. And by the way, I think the deeper you think, the slower you may be to change your mind.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But being convinced is part of a journey and a process that you do well. You do it at the Equal Rights Institute, which you founded and lead. And we're going to talk more about that in our next episode. But Josh, if we wanted to find out more about your organization and your approach, information about having these conversations, where would we go?
You can go to equalrightsinstitute.com. Everything is there. You can follow us on all the social medias. I don't know if TikTok is still going to be around by the time this episode goes out, but you can follow us on all the things. You can follow our email newsletter. We've got courses. We've got a podcast. And they can follow us all at Equal Rights Institute.
EqualRightsInstitute.com. Josh Brahm, is our producer. He was our guest today. He is the founder and president of the organization. Take some time and go by and see that, and stay tuned next episode because we're going to be talking more about what the Equal Rights Institute does and resources that they may provide for you or the school your kids attend. So we want you to learn some more in our next episode. As always, we thank you for joining us at Life Talks. Please share us with your friends on social media. You can link to us on Facebook and Twitter and all the other places, or just encourage people to follow us on YouTube as well. But as always, thanks again for listening to us here at Life Talks.